Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nicola Batossi from Multiple Sclerosis Auckland. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Luminita Apostle, who is our Senior Community Advisor. In a minute, I'll introduce the speakers to you, but it's my pleasure to open up tonight's information webinar. The format will be a talk of about 20 to 30 minutes, perhaps, and followed by questions and answers. So if you've got a question, please hold it till the end of the presentation and then type it into the chat box. And we do ask that the questions are of a general nature so that they apply to other people who are also watching tonight. So without further ado, this session is going to be recorded and it will be available on our website, and we'll promote it through our social media as well later this week. Our topic tonight is NASC funding support, needs assessment and service coordination funding support, how to make the most of that. And we are joined by two presenters from Taikura Trust. We have Emma Lothian, who is Pathways Project Manager, and Jessie Buchanan, who is Managed Support Specialist. So I would like to welcome them warmly and thank you so much for giving this talk tonight.
Kia ora, and thanks, team. Can you all hear me? Yep. You can?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Shall we open with the karakia?
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Ha ki roto, ha ki waho, kia tauti mauri I kōkere nei, I ngā pikimi, ngā heke, ko te rangi Māori e, taku e rapu nei, ti hau Māori ora. Breathe in, breathe out. Settle the Māori that stirs inside of us. For the ups and downs, it is peace that I seek. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you with us. Let's go for it. Kia ora, everyone.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jessie, for that opening. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Emma. As introduced, I am the Pathways Project Manager for Taikura Trust. I'm just going to bring up our presentation here so that we've got something in the background. So give me just one moment, please, as I bring that up. Right, sorry, just one moment. Here we go. All right, can I just check that that is coming up for, can you see that, Jessie? Hopefully, yes. All right, so kia ora. So this is our presentation. So what we're going over here is who is able to get whaikaha funded disability supports. So in general, it's people who are below 65 years old who have a disability that will be ongoing after provision of equipment and rehabilitation. It will be continuing for at least 6 months and it will require ongoing support. And there are some quite specific exclusion criteria as well around those supports, which can go into in more detail, but in terms of this presentation, I think it's probably not quite as relevant. So in terms of who can actually make an application, so you can actually self-refer to us at Taikura Trust, taikura.org.nz. What you'll find on there is that we have a referrals tab. So if you click onto that, that's going to go into a form. And then in that form, you can fill in all of your details there as well. Otherwise, your GP or any relevant medical professional or your whānau can apply on your behalf as long as they have your consent to do so. So that is something that has to also be gained from you before they make a referral. So you should know that that's happening if that is going to do so. Alternatively, if you are not comfortable with using the online system or you feel like you need a little bit more help with that, you can also call 0800 824 5872. And if you ask for our Pathways team, they're going to be able to help you specifically with any assistance that you need for making your application. So if you need help attaching documentation, or just you have some questions about it and you want some more detail, then you can give us a call. We're very happy to help out. In terms of the information that's going to be required when you are making that referral, we're going to need full name, date of birth, your NHI if you know it, but you can apply without it. We also need to have your address, contact phone numbers, which are up to date, and your email if you have one. And if you haven't done the referral yourself, then we also need the details of whoever it is who has made the referral on your behalf. So if it's one of your whānau, for example, we need to have their name and email and phone number as well so that we can get in contact. So within that, we also ask for supporting documentation. So the purpose of that supporting documentation is that we basically, in order for us to see if you're eligible for funding under DSS support, then we need to be able to have some documentation that discusses what the disability is for you and how that's affecting you as well. So in terms of what that supporting documentation is, it could be a clinical letter, it could be a report, or it could be some other documentation that basically has all of the identifying information for the applicant. So we need to make sure that we obviously have who it is that is making the application. We need the specialist details, whoever it is who is actually referring you in, or who it is who's made the diagnosis. And then we also need their qualifications and contacts as well in case we need to get in touch with them. We do ask for consent before we get in touch with them as well, like from an eligibility point of view. What we need that supporting documentation to state is a clear description, as I said, of your disability and how that actually affects you and what that might be in terms of your need for support. So for MS, we need that diagnosis generally will be coming from a neurologist. So it doesn't mean that the neurologist is the one who has to do the referral for you, just that you have some documentation from a neurologist that is stating the diagnosis. So why do we need your clinical information? So part of it is that Whaikaha has a criteria for who is able to qualify for supports. That's just DSS support. It doesn't mean that you can't get help from somewhere else. It's just that specific funding stream. There is certain criteria to meet within that, and that is that you have a disability and that you're under 65. So in terms of the information about how you're being impacted by your disability, that is basically on our end, that's so that we're able to figure out who at Taikura is best going to be able to support you. And it also gives a little bit of background to that person so that before they come out and have a kōrero with you about what it is that your support needs might be, it's so that they have a little bit of that medical background so that they're not asking all of those same questions and sort of going into that detail. It's just so that there's a little bit of background ahead of time. And then otherwise, it's really important to remember that your support needs that your supports that get put in place, the package of care that's put in place, that's based on your support needs. It's not based on your disability. So in terms of the information that you're disclosing to us, that is what we're using to help talk with you about what your supports might be. So I was asked to comment on privacy as well. So I just wanted to assure everyone that we are a registered not-for-profit and we are upheld to the same standards of privacy as any other Whaikaha contracted provider, which is basically the same as any information that you provide to a doctor or you provide to any other health professional. That same level of privacy is the same level of privacy that we are held to. So if, basically it's the same privacy as if you'd gone to your doctor. In terms of your information, it's stored securely. And we do require your express consent to share that information when it's relevant to your support. So the only sort of exclusion to that is the standard exclusions of privacy, where if there is something that's being disclosed where there's a risk of immediate harm to yourself or to another person, we do have obligations under Healthcare Act and everything like that. But outside of that, it's the standard privacy. And that is also the same privacy agreement that you would have at your doctor as well, just to be clear. So I'll hand over to Jessie to talk a little bit about what to expect when you're meeting up with us.
Just asked, how can people over 65 years old receive support?
Absolutely. So you definitely can still be receiving support if you're over 65 years of age. It's just that the New Zealand healthcare system has quite different funding streams for different things. So if you fall into an over 65, then you would just receive funding from a different funding stream. So in this case, that would fall under the health of older persons, and they tend to have all of the funding contracts for people who are over 65 who require support. Hope that helps with that question. Sorry, I actually can't see that chat. I don't know where it is, but thank you, Jessie, for monitoring that.
No, not at all. Thank you. So basically, if anyone comes to Taikura and they need some support, then we have a meeting, right? You have a meeting with you and your family, or you alone, or any kind of support person that you want there. And we have a meeting, we discuss about what you need or what you'd like, or any kind of goals you have.
Sorry.
The meeting can take up to 2 hours, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Basically, what we want to hear about is what you need, what you want, what your goals are, and we support with that.
Sorry, is that showing up fully for you, Jessie? The whole thing?
I think so. Is it showing up for
Okay.
the rest of you?
Yeah, no, it is. Sorry, I had to click through some of the other ones, so I just wanted to make sure it was actually up there for you. Sorry.
Are there any questions about meeting with us? Right, thanks, Luminita.
Oh, cool, thank you. Do you still have more on that slide, Jessie?
What's that?
Do you have some more on the same slide, or do you want me to go to the next page?
I think the next page, unless anyone's got any questions.
Cool.
Okay, so there's a range of supports that we can provide, or we can at least allocate for, and that depends on your needs, and that varies from person to person. So the idea is that we put in a plan, we talk to you about your goals, your ideas, the things that you need, and then we allocate what you need, right? So the whole thing is guided by you, and we allocate accordingly. There are some things that we can put in place immediately. For example, things like staff support. There are other things that we refer to other people. So occupational therapy, we can refer to. Speech language therapy, we can refer to. It all depends on what you want and what you need, and we take your guidance from that. Any questions about that? Feel free to shout out anytime.
I think they're probably politely holding them for the end as requested, so we can.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want me to go next screen?
I think so.
Grand. Cool.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways to support you, right? You've got individualized funding, which is one, and you've got home and community services, which is the second one. So basically, individualized funding is where you you manage your own supports, you choose it. People tend to use this when they've got family members or friends that they prefer them to support. Home and community services is when you choose to have an agency support you instead. The choice is up to you. It's entirely up to you the entire time. There's some kind of differences. The most important thing is that however you want to be chosen, however you want to be supported, we can help you with it. In terms of reviewing, people with MS tend to have different needs. Some people with MS go for years without a change in needs. Other people with MS tend to evolve regularly. We're here for you whatever way you want, right? And that's important. That's really important to understand, is that whenever you need support, contact us and let us review your plan. Usually we tend to put plans in place for 12 months because we don't want you really bothered about the bureaucracy or the issues with, support plans. If you need an early review, that's absolutely fine. We're here to work for you.
All right, open the floor for some questions.
Let's go for it, guys.
Yeah. That's sort of a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the things about us. So yeah, anything that is more specific that you'd like to know, we can go for that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can open that back out.
And hey, look, definitely go for it. And bear in mind, if there are questions that you've got beyond tonight, that's fine. You can email Emma and I, and we'll answer it later.
Are we going to have your email addresses at the end of the presentation, or?
Yeah, we can absolutely pass that along. Yeah. And
yes.
I think if people do have questions that are more individual, that it's probably better to reach out sort of with those questions specifically, or if it is that you find that quite a few people maybe are feeding back to you that they have the same questions, like absolutely feel free to come back to us and we can sort of do more of an overall reply about what the answers might be to those if a wider group would want those answers as well. So yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Emma. And we recognise that MS is a very personal, very individualised kind of diagnosis. If there's something that comes up that you'd rather reply to or want a personal response, please email us individually and we'll respond to you individually.
Thank you so much for that. Very reassuring and very, very, relevant presentation. Everything's been fantastic. I think that the questions are around the respite care. People, it's often a question how respite is allocated over the 12 months and how quickly people can actually access respite facilities if they need to go. Is that something that
thanks, Emma. I'll take this if you don't mind.
Thank you. Please do. Yeah.
So we've got a few options for respite, right? Not all of them are ideal. So we can provide in-home respite and we can provide out-of-home respite allocations. It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt that respite allocations or respite options in Auckland, probably across the country, but in Auckland particularly, are quite limited. So typically when we look at respite, we look at, there's 3 providers in Auckland who have options for respite. Otherwise, people are going into respite homes or rest home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ideal. We're not saying it is, right? We can also provide respite allocations for respite in-home.
Yeah.
Is there a particular respite issue you're thinking of, or are you thinking in general?
People being able to access respite regularly. We have clients that, they've organized 1 week in the month, to be away from home, just to give a break to the carer. And, they find it difficult to find the facility to accommodate that. And quite often they find somewhere, and it's not ideal, as you said, and to find something else. And it's,
No, quite right. And I think typically the carers would prefer the person goes out of home. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, you're right. So we've got 3 organisations that we can organise out of home respite for.
Can you tell us these organisations or?
Yep. NZ Care.
Yeah.
Spectrum Care.
Yeah.
And NZCL.
Okay.
So there's 3 organisations. And then, of course, we have other organisations, which are rest homes and hospitals.
Yeah.
Not ideal. Then we also have individualised funding.
Yeah.
Which is where people can access respite alternatively for other kinds of homes.
Okay. And in terms of individualized funding, do people have to work with the IF hosts, or they can manage the funding themselves, or because some people find it quite difficult, you know, the whole process, even though they prefer IF, sometimes it's not easy.
No, you're quite right. Ultimately, people have to work through IF hosts at the moment. They do. They work through a host.
Yeah, I can understand the challenges around that with the IF, because I know the flexibility is very appealing, like around, well, and perhaps some of that flexibility is a bit altered at the moment around the changes with funding within whaikaha. So that is a sort of evolving situation. But yeah, very challenging that if you go down that IF route, you are kind of having to be the employer of whoever it is that is doing the supports for you. So that's adding in those complications there. But you do get that flexibility and you have a bit more choice versus if you're going for a provider. And there is, in terms of, I would say, if you're feeling quite overloaded, then I think sometimes having a provider manage that for you does take a lot of that administration away from it as well. So I think it is really dependent on your individual situation and which elements of it feel more positive to you within there.
There is another question here. Can you please tell us what other type of things can be funded, or is this specific to needs? Are there any examples you can give? Does your organization assist in funding for well-being?
Right, I've just seen these questions come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, people want to know if they can get a little bit of funding, let's say for yoga classes or for, you know, things that they can't afford otherwise, if the funding can be used for this, you know, different, not just the home support or, you know, personal cares, something else that would.
Would you like me to reply to the questions individually?
No, if you wanna, I'm sure lots of people are wondering, you know, what is something else that you guys offer, and if you can shed some light on that would be helpful. Yeah.
In terms of respite, or in terms, I'm just looking at the questions that are coming through.
No, in terms of what other supports you can offer.
I would say in terms of like some of the support that we do is around like support coordination. So we do help within those conversations. In terms of funding, like if the question is around, can you use your IF budget to, is that the sort of question, if you can use your IF budget to be able to fund some of those things? My understanding is that it's quite dependent on what that is and what the person's support needs are. And a lot of that would be conversation with the IF host as well, because my understanding is that they tend to be approving those costs. So it can be a little bit more tricky within there. In terms of our organization, we don't have supports outside of that, if that makes sense. Like we're sort of really involved on the side of working through the DSS supports. Like there is other, like we definitely provide education and sort of liaison and that sort of thing as well. But in terms of being able to provide wellness, I would say that wouldn't be something that we're providing, but we have, we're often able to do a lot of connection to sort of like mainstream supports as well. So there is, you know, there's a lot of different community groups and things like that we can sometimes help a lot of the people who you meet with when you're having your discussion around an outcomes plan or needs assessment. The person who talks to you will also have a lot of knowledge about different options as well that you might not know about, that maybe wouldn't come through your funding, but might be something that does help you with those goals as well. I know that's a little bit of a vague answer, but I think
there is a more specific question. If you if funding would be allocated for someone to pay for physiotherapy, I think it's about private physio.
Gotcha. The answer to that is that basically if something is funded through another stream, so for example, all of the physiotherapy, occupational therapy, etc., is funded more through Te Wharu Ora. So because of that, you wouldn't be able to use your funding for something that has funding somewhere else. So physiotherapy, for example, falls under that, and that the funding for that would normally come through the health system versus like your disability support.
Okay. Someone is asking, who do we contact if we aren't happy with the home help? Who do
I'm going to put my email address, that answer.
Okay.
Right.
Yep, sounds great. Yeah.
Because I'm part of the managed support team.
Yep.
And we're a case management support team, and I'd like to know more about this. Right.
Yep.
So please feel free. Like I said, I'll reply privately to this person. Yeah. Just to
Okay.
discuss individual cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, from a broader scope as well, that I think we can help in terms of like our support coordination. Like, we do have liaison with providers as well. So absolutely, like, if you are having an issue and you're not quite sure how to manage that, definitely contact us. Like, we are here to help and support as well. So whilst we aren't the ones who are providing the supports that are coming out to you for your home help, we do have liaison with providers, and so, you know, we can at least help guide you for the process that you would need to go through, whatever it might be.
Thank you
and
so
also,
much.
as Jessie said, like, she's involved very closely with all of that as well, so definitely a great person to be contacting if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, thank you. No, sounds great. Another question is, if I receive personal care and also need help around home, do I apply for an increase in my 20 allocated hours, or do I apply for household management separately? I don't know if you can see this.
Hang on a minute, can you say that again?
If I receive personal care and also need help around the home,
Yeah.
do I apply for an increase in my 20 allocated hours, or do I apply for household management separately?
Right. So the household management thing is a whaikaha guideline.
Yes.
For us to allocate household management,
Yep.
people need to have a community services card. Right. That's
Yes.
the current guideline at the moment. So we can allocate personal care regardless of your financial situation. Personal care is fine. Household management, people need a community services card for us to allocate.
Thank you for that. Yes, very clear. Another question is, can individualized funding be used for home modification if other government department has declined modification?
Perhaps. That's still something that's in the pipeline. The idea is with individualized funding is that we have to explore all other options before IF is used. At the moment, that question is still up in the air.
Okay. There's another question about what does home help include? If areas like outside the home, gardening and house cleaning, no. If regular fatigue is an issue, so as you probably know, fatigue is a big symptom, yeah, for people.
Fatigue is a massive issue with MS. We know that.
Yeah.
We completely recognise that. At the moment, what we can allocate for household management is things typically inside the home, so there are barriers to it. Apparently, gardening, pretty much anything outside the home, is not recognised, right? It's more or less things like cooking, meal preparations, grocery shopping, mopping, vacuuming, linen changes. At the moment, as far as we know, outside windows, lawn mowing is not included. Gardening's not included.
Okay, thank you for that. And what does household management cover? If you have any.
So meal preparations. It also covers grocery shopping.
Okay, no, I'm thinking of personal cares.
Oh, personal cares. Oh, right.
Personal cares. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So personal cares can cover a manner of things.
Yes.
It's essentially around mobility.
Yeah.
Right. Showering, clothing, makeup, hair, bathroom needs, medications.
And I think feeding as well. I think, is that right, Jessie? Yeah.
That's quite right, Emma.
Food. Yeah. So it's the household management falls into the preparing the food, I think, and then the personal cares covers. Well, does personal care also cover the meal preparation?
Meal preparation is under household management.
Yeah. So yes, if you need help with eating, then that would come under your personal care as well.
Okay, thank you.
I
Okay,
can
so
see there a question around, can you get more help after having surgery? Is that the next one?
yeah, correct. Yeah.
What I would say is that anytime that you go into hospital and you have surgery, or there's any standard medical procedure or anything else that goes on, when you're being discharged from the hospital, you should still go through a standard discharge planning with the hospital, because they have a responsibility to make sure that when you go home, that you are actually going to be able to manage. So I would say if you're having increased needs at that point because of the surgery, that is something that the hospital should be managing for you to go home as well. So yeah, if that answers that question well enough, your standard discharge planning from hospital would still apply. For anybody who'd had a surgery, they should be giving you the help that you need. In terms of that was long, like going on for longer, Jessie, do you have any comment on that as well?
No, same as what you've said, Emma.
Okay, cool.
Is there a standard period of time that the hospital actually cares for the person that's been discharged in the community, and then you guys take over, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit dependent on situation, I would say. So in general, if it was something that was short term, like as in a short term need, then that generally would be covered under the hospital and more around that kind of health planning through there. I would say my understanding is it's kind of up to 3 months, about, mainly because if you didn't already have disability supports in place, there wouldn't be an expectation that would, like if you went into the hospital and you had a new need and it wasn't something that you'd been supported for before, that support would go into place in sort of the short term until further supports were able to go in. So for example, if you had a surgery and that was only going to be, I don't know, let's say you would have 3 or 4 months or something like that where you needed that increase in help, that's something that wouldn't fall under your disability support. That would fall under Te Whare Ora, because in general, the expectation is it's if something that's going to last for longer than 6 months, so it's something that's a little bit more permanent, that the DSS supports would come in from that point of view. So that's kind of how it starts to split apart. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated it's a bit more complicated if your increased need, like after coming home from the hospital, is because you are struggling more with the fatigue or other symptoms from MS, that's sort of complicating that after surgery. And I would say that you could absolutely have a conversation with us if you've got an increase in need at that point, but the basic discharge planning should be done by the hospital to go home.
Okay. Yeah, no, sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any other question.
I'm just trying to reply to these individually, Luminita.
It's better. I don't know how you feel, but yeah, you can reply so everyone can hear your answers.
I guess I can make a bit of a comment in general, and Jessie can do a specific reply or something like that. But in terms of the community services card, if the question there is, if I don't have a community services card, am I still able to apply for support? The only part of that you're not going to be able to get is your household management. So that's just currently at the moment that guideline is around, if you need household management, that you have to have the community services card for that specifically. Otherwise, you absolutely qualify for DSS supports outside of that. You don't have to have a community services card for your publicly funded healthcare, which is what that falls under, basically. I hope that answers the question for that person. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your waiting list? If someone sends a self-referral for a needs assessment, how long do they need to wait?
Yes, ever evolving. I'll comment on the eligibility side first, and Jessie can comment on the needs assessment side. So at the moment, as you might imagine, with the changes to the whaikaha guidelines around purchasing, there is a lot of questions and there's a lot of concerns for people. So that has contributed to wait times, I would say. There's also within the eligibility team, there's a lot of referrals that are coming in. I would say in general, if you've done a self-referral, that you're probably looking between 3 to 6 weeks to get that first conversation about if you're eligible. I would say in terms of MS, if you have a diagnosis of MS and you've sent us through a letter from a neurologist, that's going to be pretty straightforward, really. Like that's not going to require a lot of back and forth, particularly under the, like if you are under the age of 65 when you're applying with us, then you know that's going to be pretty straightforward and relatively quick from that point of view. It definitely does delay things a little bit more if you don't attach documentation at the time. I know that there was maybe some concerns around privacy, or you asked me to sort of comment on privacy as well. What I will say is that when you make that referral through to us, that information is not being passed along. That information is being used purely for the point of view of determining eligibility. So we don't like what we're requiring is enough information to determine that you have a disability and some support needs. So that's kind of what we're looking for from the point of view from eligibility, if you're worried about giving more information at that point. What I will say is that around still going along privacy is that when it comes to your discussion that you're having around your outcomes plan, your needs assessment, the more information that you are willing to disclose in terms of what your needs are, the more able the person is who's meeting with you is going to be able to actually meet those needs and sort of come up with a plan that does make sense for you. So what I would suggest to people is that if they haven't had a needs assessment previously, it's really good to think about what a good day looks like for you, or what you want your life to look like there, and sort of what maybe some challenges are in the day-to-day, so that when you actually are having that conversation, you've sort of thought through that a little bit, because I know it can be quite someone comes in and they're talking to you and you're having these questions and discussion, it can be easy to kind of forget some of the information that you wanted to go with. So I would say, like, it's definitely worth having a little bit of a think about your day-to-day and where you think some of those needs might be, so that when it comes to that meeting, you're not sort of taken by surprise that someone's going to be asking you about that. Those questions are purely to help determine support needs. They're not for anything outside of that, and that information is only being used to determine your support package. I don't know if is there any further question on privacy around that, or does that kind of
I've got another question. It's not around necessarily around privacy, but it's also about the specialist report that you require to establish eligibility. How old can this letter be? Because I had in the past, referrals being declined because the letter attached was, I don't know, probably over 12 months old. And it was a request from your agency to provide a new, more recent letter. And the thing is, people see their neurologist probably every 12 months.
I totally understand that.
Lucky. Sometimes is, and just being through the pandemic and everything else, it's 24 months and plus.
Yes, completely understand that. I would say, personally, I wouldn't say that it would necessarily have to be within 12 months, is my understanding, to determine eligibility. Like if you have a diagnosis of MS, you will still continue to have MS. It's not as if that's going to have gone away. I would say the only problem would potentially be if you had I guess I don't know that this exact case, and I definitely, if the person would be willing to give me a little bit more information who it was or something like that, I can actually look into a little bit, because that is also a good training opportunity for us. I would say what we do need is a referral to us, like more recently, because the reason that we, like, for example, if someone's had services with us and then they've decided that they didn't want to do supports at the time, or they've exited the service for whatever reason. And I will be clear as well that that doesn't disadvantage you in any way. If you decide that you don't want supports at the time, that doesn't mean you can't access supports later. Like, you're not disadvantaged by deciding to or not to start with those supports at the time. But the reason that we need more, the referral itself has to be more updated. So if you've had services with us, let's say like 2 years ago, and you would like to reactivate, we do quite often ask for a new referral through Lighthouse, because, like, through our system, just because we need up-to-date contact details. It's something that quite often happens, is that if people have changed their phone number or email or anything like that, and we're trying to get in touch with them, that we basically just need to have the right information there. So I would say around the referral, that does need to be more updated, but I wouldn't say that the documentation should have to be within 12 months, because I do know that, you know, you do only get so regular appointments, and it's difficult for people to be contacting a neurologist again to get more than that. I would say that if there was any challenge around that, and you have a diagnosis of MS, you could also be asking your GP, for example, like, to be sending, you could ask them to send that through on your behalf. Absolutely. They have a clinical portal that they can put those referrals through, is another way that you can come in. Or, you know, that GP letter could be, you know, that's your recent letter and it has in there, this person has this diagnosis, if that was more of a challenge. But if that person would be happy for me to know their name and you could email it to me later if they consent to that, then I'm very happy to look into it and just see what it was, because maybe that's a bit of a training opportunity as well. And I can
do that.
confirm that as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Because I also totally understand it's not like your diagnosis is going to change, it's just your support needs might have changed in that time. But, you know, that's a different conversation really, isn't it?
True. Thank you.
That's okay.
There is another question around transport. If funding can be used to pay for taxi,
difficult one, right?
It is,
because Whaikaha have, as you know, have changed the guidelines. They're currently reviewing them. At the moment, I don't think we can answer that for a fact.
Okay.
Yeah, unhelpful as it is.
Yeah. I think they're updating it weekly at the moment.
Updating it weekly.
Almost,
So there are a few things that are being reworked at the moment.
But part of the transport, especially the part related to medical appointments and health related, they can be covered via disability allowance, via WINS, I think. So maybe,
My understanding is there's other funding that covers transport as well. It just isn't under your DSS. It's through a different avenue, which we can get back to you.
We've got Waka Ora. We've got an organisation outside of DSS who are currently providing voluntary transportation.
Wow, that's good to know. Yeah, really good.
And I think there is other funding around transport, the name of which has escaped me currently, but basically there are other funding avenues outside of your own DSS funding, because much like the physiotherapy, if there's funding that exists somewhere else to cover that need, then generally you're going to have more of a challenge to use your DSS supports to try and fund that thing.
Okay, thank you for that.
And sorry, I know it's really challenging, isn't it? Because you sort of think, oh gosh, it would be much more simple if it could all be from one pool.
That's why you're here tonight, because it's not simple.
It genuinely is not simple, and we are aware that it's not simple, I would say as well. So I would really encourage anybody, if they do have questions or they're unsure of something, to definitely get in contact, because you know, we have our info line that you can call on if you have like a general question around supports. If you have a more specific question, you can be guided along the line. Like, you know, you'll be put along to someone who's able to help you. If that person isn't available, like right then and there, they'll usually be getting back to you by email or giving you a phone call back. So there are avenues to come into for help around that, and particularly in terms of if you're having trouble around like making a referral or getting that eligibility in the first place. If you phone up the 0800 number and you ask for the Pathways team, like which is my team at the moment, we're the ones who are managing all of that eligibility. So if you have any of those questions, you just ask to go down Pathways, and then we're able to provide that support. You can also say, I just have a question about referrals, I need some help. Absolutely. Very, very happy to help with that.
Thank you so much. I think
No problem.
it's been really, really helpful and very interesting, and yeah, very personalized answers. And yeah, I hope people have some clarity now, because it's quite tricky. Yeah.
It's very tricky, and you know, we are aware of the challenges around the household management with fatigue and the community services card, and you know that is obviously challenging, and you know, particularly when you have a neurodegenerative condition, that is a different story, you know, that presents differently for different people. And yeah, so aware it's a challenge for sure. I think I saw a question around this one's probably for you, Jessie, the 12 monthly reviews. What gets reviewed in terms of supports, and can supports be reduced?
Sorry, say that again, Emo.
That's all right. There was the 12 monthly reviews, and the person was wondering what gets reviewed in terms of those supports, and can they be reduced? Presuming they're wondering, would it be reduced if they, you know, around that.
Yeah, of course. So there's a few things. Taikoto Trust covers all kinds of disabilities, right? And some of them are lifelong and some of them are not. Multiple sclerosis is an evolving diagnosis, and as such, some people require earlier reviews. If you want an earlier review, that's fine. Get in touch with us.
Yeah, people are worried that some of supports can be reduced after the review. That's
the supports won't be reduced. The supports are based on needs, right? So if you've got a need, they're not going to be reduced. We're going to support you. So what we need is the information. You know, basically, you're in charge. Whatever it is that you want or whatever it is that you need, we're working with that. And we appreciate our MS champs. May require earlier reviews. Some of them require, you know, not necessarily 12 months, but actually earlier. Yeah. And others require for us to leave them alone. So, yeah, we're trying to be as individualized as possible.
And for someone to apply for a review, do they need to send a new referral, or how is this review? Actually, I know it's automatically every 12 months, but if someone requires one after 3 months, do they just make a phone call to you?
Make a phone call. Yeah.
Is that all?
Yeah. We're well aware of the evolving nature of MS.
Excellent, thank you.
Right, and other neurological diseases or disorders. So, no, there doesn't need to be a clinical documentation every time.
Okay, thank you.
Get in touch. Let's hear about it. MS evolves in all kinds of good or other ways.
Thank you. That's very good to know. Thank you.
I think we've come to the end of our session, but I just wanted to say that we've learned a lot, but also, you know, you really have an appreciation of, you know, coming here tonight of the challenges that people with MS in particular have. You know, I've been really impressed with your kindness and willingness to really help every single person, and leaving an open door for questions, and also acknowledging that it is a complex system, because often it's not so complex for the provider, right? So yeah, really appreciate you having that user lens on the system. So Jessie and Emma, a big thanks from Luminita and myself, and everybody in our community here tonight, I'm sure, for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you so very much.
You are very welcome. I would like to say as well, just before we finish up, that if people, basically, if you're having issues with how something is going, or you're feeling unhappy about something, you're not going to be punished in any way for feeding that back or asking further questions about it as well. Like if you're having an issue with something or anything like that, we do take feedback as a real learning opportunity and an opportunity for growth as well. So please don't feel as if you can't provide feedback if something hasn't gone well or you've had a challenge along the way, because the organisation is ever evolving and ever growing and always looking for opportunities to improve as well. So please don't feel as if feedback will disadvantage you in any way around your supports. It absolutely, I mean, one, that's completely illegal. You know, and you absolutely can't be disadvantaged from that point of view, but also it is an open door for feedback, and it is an open door if there are issues with things like that. So if people are having issues around like making those referrals, absolutely feel free to send those through to me, because I'm going to be able to help from like that eligibility, like basically the front door of the organization. If you're having issues around that, absolutely let me know. Like I'm looking at it, I'm looking for opportunities to improve. So like, please do feel free to feed that through.
100%. And thanks so much for that, Emma. And as Luminita may know, I've got a personal and private connection with the MS Society within my own family. You feel free to get in touch with me anytime.
Yeah.
We're right here for you. We know about it. We're here.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to get to meet with all of you and speak. I hope it was helpful. And yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Ko Maria.
For Maria, much love, everyone.
Thank you.
Kia ora.